I think we may circle back to this figure more frequently now. There's a rising star in MAGA, one of these characters that I've told you about, who says they're the only true leftist, and that if you're leftist, you're really MAGA. Okay. And she literally got laughed at, which a little part of you is sad, but the points that she'll make when she goes on these CNN panels makes no sense. So this is, again, Batya Ungar-Sargon, and she was with Abby Phillip, and Abby Phillip couldn't help but actually laugh at one of the arguments that she was making. You'll see Kevin O'Leary there. We'll also talk about some moments from him on one of these CNN panels. If you appreciate the show, please do click the subscribe button. We're going to have fun with this one.
Oh, and I think, I bet you, I don't know anyone, even people who agree with you about the need to deal with trade barriers, the tariffs and then the non-tariff trade barriers, would disagree that that needs to be addressed. Again, it's how, right?
So, but I think that the very thing that he's being criticized for is the thing that worked.
Okay, wait, really try, because Abby will end up saying, I'm genuinely confused what you were trying to argue there. So really try to decipher what the argument is here.
How, right?
So, but I think that the very thing that he's being criticized for is the thing that worked. If he had come in and very nicely and politely gone to each of these countries and said, I'm trying to explain. If he had very nicely and calmly and politely gone to each of these countries and said, look, you've been screwing us over, you've been screwing over the American working class for 40 years, and we're not going to take it anymore. Let's sit down and have like a nice conversation. Why won't you, how about you bring down those tariffs? Let's meet halfway somewhere. They would have said, no way. I'll tell you what worked. He picked up a baseball bat, he whacked the stock market, and now they're all sitting there in a state of relief that it's only a 10% tariff, and they're coming to the table.
Wait, I'm confused.
That's how you know that it worked.
I'm legitimately confused. So Trump destroying 20% of wealth in the country over the last 4 months. Who wins from that?
Of course they have.
Let me give you the data on the losses. April 3rd was a meltdown. Let me give you the data.
Hold on, Kevin. Don't interrupt me.
I want facts.
Who benefits when the stock market drops and people lose value in both their investments and also
now to
in terms of the
get a deal? So yeah, it's been 4 weeks and we don't have a deal yet. They're working. They're very close to announcing them. India and Vietnam both announced tariffs on China. You think they would have done that if Trump hadn't shown that he was serious about standing up for the American working class and that he doesn't work for Wall Street?
How have the American people benefited is the question that I'm asking in this period.
$1.5 trillion in manufacturing.
Those are commitments that have not materialized in a
4
single
weeks.
Most of those are press releases and pictures with shovels, and then it never happens. And you can go back. That is what happened.
Yeah, and honestly, a lot of those too, if you look into the details of them, ride on a wave of Biden era policies. Oh no! Oh, I said it. It's true. I'm sorry. It's true. But I don't know what the argument was. So Trump hit the stock market with a bat, and that caused a bunch of people fear. So then now countries are negotiating with us. Yeah. They're doing this interesting thing where they ignore the counterfactual. They ignore the alternative scenario where Trump could have made, if this actually were just for negotiation purposes, then lay out the demands. I've said it so many times, and tell people when a threat will take place. So here's my threat. It'll manifest on this date if you don't make a fair deal with us. But I don't think Trump really knows what it is that he's trying to get out of these countries. Because when pressed, sometimes he'll say, I don't want a trade deficit with them. Just economically completely impossible with most of the countries we're talking about. Unless we fundamentally suppress U.S. consumer demand, which wouldn't be good for our economy. So that can't be the demand. So what is it that you're trying to get out of these countries? And that can't be articulated. There can't be a thoughtful approach. So instead, it just has to be, we're going to, as she said, hit the economy with a bat and see what happens. But they assume that the only reason countries are going, yeah, sure. A lot that they're now bragging. We watched an economist talk about this, but now some of the things like they were talking about South Korea, we could have a really good deal with, are countries we already have really preferable deals with. So they'll probably just kind of like recycle the same thing we already had and then go, it's a big victory. But apparently it was good for a lot of people to lose a lot of money in the United States, and for economic uncertainty and for price increases to be on the horizon, and for empty ships or partially empty ships to be indicating supply chain problems. All that's great because now countries that were already friendly to us already wanted to negotiate with us and had been asking Trump, can we preemptively negotiate? And he turned them down, and now they're negotiating maybe. But also Trump said he already had 200 deals with them, but then his other people said they didn't have any deals. So we don't really know what's going on, but Batya says it's amazing. Here's another moment.
What do you think about this idea? Like, let's say they study it. What do you think about the idea of actually U.S. troops in American cities conducting law enforcement actions?
No,
first of all, there are some serious constitutional issues, but
this is obviously against the Constitution. So I don't support anything that goes against the Constitution. What I really like is that I have a president who is pushing the boundary to figure out how he can deliver on the promises that he made to
let me tell you
going to the Supreme Court with suggestions. I mean, again, this one just said we should study whether or not this is possible.
Let me actually tell you what has been studied. Donald Trump last week rescinded millions of dollars from cities and states for the gun violence prevention programs, for Violence Against Women's Act, ripping cities and states from federal funding that has been studied already.
Do you think those were working? Because I don't think they were working.
When you look at, if you care about...
It's just, I don't want to be patronizing or whatever, but I don't, feel a little bit bad, kind of, because it just doesn't seem... We live in a world now where you can get prestigious TV jobs for going to Twitter and just kind of whatever you see, just grab, you put on your plate, and you just eat whatever Twitter feeds you. And then you go on TV and just barf it all up. And that's enough. Like that talking point, you think those have been working? And there's this pride. Oh, you think it's been working? Literally, yeah. You know why? Because we saw huge crime plummets during the Biden era and huge investments in programs like those. Yeah, I do think they had been at least contributing to effective results. But do you care about that, or is it just nice to say stuff? Just hear yourself say stuff? I really don't know sometimes. And the Scott Jennings model proves that you'll keep your good job if you just say infuriating things.
Studies and read the studies, they are working. You see a decline where places, do they happen overnight? I mean, last segment you were like, it's only 4 weeks. It takes time actually to end systemic problems. So don't tell me that you actually want to keep cities safe by pushing the boundaries and defying the Constitution to militarize law enforcement when the week before you stripped cities and states from programs that actually kept communities safe. Is it perfect? No, but you can't have it both ways.
If you talk to police officers, they feel that they have been neutered and they cannot do their job.
Neutered? I talked to a police officer the other day, and he said to me, it feels like my balls were chopped off. He said that. I said, sir, what does it feel like Biden did to you? And he told me that Biden chopped his balls off. He said that to me. I said, both? He said, yeah, both. My balls. He neutered me. Like a dog. Rough.
But you can't have it both ways.
If you talk to police officers, they feel that they have been neutered and they cannot do their jobs.
If you talk to police officers, they would be disappointed that because most of these programs actually sit in police departments. It is taking funding away from local municipalities and law enforcement. If you actually ask them, that's what they would say.
All right, we got to leave it there.
Wow, yes. Go the other contributor. That was great. You know what's interesting? What Batya said, this kind of sums up MAGA. I don't think, because originally they were talking about the idea of using U.S. military for law enforcement, which is unconstitutional. She goes, I want Trump to follow the Constitution. I never want him to do anything that violates the Constitution. And also, I love that idea. They always, and Trump does it, I want to follow the law, but also here are 10 things I want to do that are against the law. I want to get rid of birthright citizenship. I want to deport U.S. citizens. I want to send U.S. citizens to an El Salvadoran prison camp. I want to terminate the Constitution. I want to stay in power past my constitutionally mandated term, etc. But I only want to follow the law. No, that doesn't work. Sorry, the caveat just got squished and squashed by the proposals that you're laying out there. Then I think now that we get to Kevin O'Leary, which, it's sad. It's sad because I grew up watching Shark Tank, and Kevin, you're breaking my heart.
Deportations of gangbangers. 10%.
Is gangbangers still a thing? Gangbangers? Gangbangers. Is that a thing still? Gangbangers. Wow.
Deportations of gangbangers. 10% global.
Alleged.
What do you mean? There are many that are not alleged.
No, well, when 60 Minutes did their report, it found that 75% of the people that have been sent to El Salvador.
You don't dispute that there were gangbangers deported.
I dispute that the 238 Venezuelans that were sent to SECOT in El Salvador all have ties to gangs.
We can debate
they
that.
May all
Let's
have
put that
tattoos.
aside. Let's put that aside.
Is any of that making stuff more affordable?
I'm getting there.
How is that helping?
I'm getting there.
CBS is really credible.
We only got an hour.
Really credible. They don't edit any interviews.
Oh, okay.
They're just
All
great.
right,
Everybody
Kevin.
edits interviews.
Did you see Kevin? He was doing sarcasm. Kevin does sarcasm. Cole? Kevin does.
Well, I was being a little bit sarcastic when I said that.
We're still workshopping the soundboard. We'll get there. Don't worry about it. So if you missed it, Kevin was going, because the stat that Anna Navarro cited was from CBS of the people they're sending to an indefinite sentence in El Salvador in a prison camp, that most of them don't have criminal records. So in the country illegally, but then beyond that, not having criminal records. And so the idea of now they just rot away in a prison for that? What? Without due process? You're not proving that they're the dangerous people that you say that they are. If they're the dangerous people, like let's get it going, but let's do this whole crazy thing, due process. But then Kevin is being snarky and says, oh no, you see, CBS edits interviews responding to Trump's lawsuit.
I'm getting there.
CBS is really credible.
We only got an hour.
Really credible. They don't edit any interviews.
Oh, okay.
They're just
All
great.
right.
Everybody
Kevin.
edits interviews, Kevin.
wait,
Even
all right.
They are the
Shark
rock
Tank
solid.
edits
Hold
too.
on.
Everybody
solid.
edits.
That's a complete non sequitur, okay? It's unrelated to the conversation. First of all, Trump had his interviews edited by Fox. That issue with CBS is being litigated, but it's not likely to be successful.
glad it's being litigated.
Because editing interviews is allowed in the United States of America, and it wasn't edited deceptively. But anyway, we're moving on because that is not part of the conversation.
Again, I only want Trump to follow the Constitution. And also I love that he's trying to destroy a company because they did coverage that he didn't like. No, those two things don't go hand in hand. And remember, great job again by Abby Phillip. I do love that sometimes hosts, I think they get scared. They're going to be accused of whenever they just say factual information, you're too liberal. But she is really good about actually correcting her guests, which I do appreciate. So there, in the case of the Harris interview that Trump is suing CBS over and that the FCC is harassing CBS over and is blocking a merger over and all that stuff we've talked about, it was literally Kamala Harris gave an answer and they played an answer that reiterated the same point twice. Literally. The same point twice. So, because this is how editing works, you go, oh, well, snip down this part and then that'll be the answer. And then at some point in a different broadcast, they played the other part of the answer. Perfect. Because you have time constraints. It's called Hollywood TV. And in the case of the Fox interview that we've talked about, and a bunch of his interviews, when he starts rambling, they cut him off and they edit it. But actual deception, But I still think Fox has the right to do this. I don't think that they should be taken off of the air for it. But they did cut out when Trump got asked about Epstein and went, I would declassify JFK. I would declassify MLK. And then they went, what about Epstein? He went, yeah, that one less so. And they cut out whenever he started going, I don't know about that because there's a lot of phony stuff and who knows what would be revealed about people. I don't know. Not me, but other people, I didn't think about other people. That whole thing, they cut it out, except for in like some full footage that we got, but not when they broadcast it on Fox News. And that's not deception, but Kevin O'Leary thinks that CBS was. It's absolutely ridiculous.
First of all, it's been 4 weeks. There have been 0 deals, okay? So again, every day...
4 weeks? Oh my goodness, he couldn't get a deal done in 4 weeks?
Well, Kevin, it was an option for this administration to pursue this.
So you need to do it 24 hours,
It
right?
was an option for this administration to pursue a strategy of deals before slapping tariffs on the whole world. That could have happened too,
I'm just suggesting.
Right? And I don't know, and I think, I bet you, I don't know.
So this is another thing that defenders of Trump will do. Trump will say some huge crazy goal, like or Navarro or one of the spokespeople will say 90 deals with different countries to resolve the trade wars, 90 deals in 90 days. And then defenders of Trump will get asked about that. Oh, they said 90 deals in 90 days. And the defenders will go, oh my gosh. You think it's realistic to demand that Trump gets 90 deals in 90 days? No, but he said that. And then Trump goes out in a Time interview and says, I've made 200 deals already. To which his defenders go and asked about it. You think he's doing 200 deals? No, he said that. He said that. That's not, we're asking, it's very weird. By the way, all of this chaos is literally to blame for the conservatives in Canada losing to the liberals after it was a shoo-in. It was so certain, it seemed, that liberals were going to lose, and they won. New York Times reports, Mark Carney's liberals win Canada's election because of Trump, essentially. Prime Minister Mark Carney led his Liberal Party to a narrow victory in Canada's pivotal election on Monday, securing a 4th term in power for the party and a renewed mandate to lead the fight against President Trump over trade and the nation's sovereignty. Trump's threatening to annex them, and he's starting trade wars with them. And it went from seemingly liberals were going to be trounced to them winning because of Trump. Which is weird because he was bragging about this, which it doesn't make any sense because he's way more aligned with Pierre Poilievre and with the conservatives, obviously. And Pierre was kind of trying to be a little mini Trump. But in that Atlantic interview he did with Jeffrey Goldberg, this wasn't leaked to Goldberg. This was actually a voluntary conversation. Goldberg said, you seriously want them to become a state? And Trump said, I think that would be great. And then Goldberg pointed out that, Canada would be a hell of a big democratic state. That would be a huge liberal state in sort of American parlance. And Trump said, a lot of people say that, but I'm okay with it if it has to be. Because I think, actually, until I came along, remember that the conservative was leading by 25 points. Then I was disliked by enough of the Canadians that I've thrown the election to a close call, right? I don't even know if it's a close call, but the conservative, they didn't like Governor Trudeau too much, and I would call him Governor Trudeau, but he wasn't fond of that. And then mere hours before the election, he said, good luck to the great people of Canada. Elect the man who has the strength and wisdom to cut your taxes in half, increase your military power for free to the highest level in the world, have your car, steel, aluminum, lumber, energy, and all other businesses quadruple in size with zero tariffs on taxes. If Canada becomes the cherished 51st state of the United States, no more artificially drawn line for many years ago. In other words, a border. Look how beautiful this landmass would be. Free access with no border, all positives with no negatives. It was meant to be. America can no longer subsidize Canada with hundreds of billions of dollars a year that we've been spending in the past, which is not true. He's talking about trade deficit again. But that sort of language, and he didn't even care about defeating his friendly, his more ideologically aligned figure and party For what? We don't know. A Canadian voted really based off Trump, she said. And I love the kindness that comes through with the insult.
I think who I voted for would be the best to take care of Trump. Because Trump is, I'm sorry to say, an ass. And he shouldn't even be president.
I gotta do that more often. That's great. I think that Trump, I'm sorry to say it, is an asshole. That's great. It's so Canadian, being nice in the face of an insult. End Wokeness, a MAGA account, said Canada will be much easier to invade with a liberal in charge. Roll in those tanks. Which is, how MAGA, they're the peace people, they say. Which, by the way, here's what happened. I learned this, y'all know. I co-hosted, we did a debate podcast with a right-wing figure. And one of the things I learned was that they find it funny. They would tell me this. They'd say, you fell into our trap. They find it funny when liberals get upset by crazy things they say. So it's like, this is a joke, sort of, but it's not, but it kind of is. And it's like, you say it, and then if liberals get mad, you go, ha, ha, ha. Got you. How is that cute or funny at all? You're saying something based on real news events, like Trump actually saying he wants to take over Canada. He hasn't said by military force, but he also waffles on ruling that out. And then you're saying roll in those tanks so that then you can go find comments from liberals who say that's crazy and go, ha ha, you suck.
Legalize comedy.
No, Elon. Nice one, Cole. Media. A federal judge firmly swatted down a series of arguments from a Department of Justice attorney defending legalized comedy. From a Department of Justice attorney defending President Donald Trump's executive order targeting the Jenner and Block LLP law firm at a hearing Monday, at one point uttering an exacerbated, "Give me a break." So now swatted down in court, a federal judge who was appointed by George W. Bush is even saying, why are you targeting law firms for representing people Trump doesn't like? That's not democracy. Share your thoughts in the comments.